ในเขตพื้นที่แคว้นบาสเนี่ยนะฮะอยู่ทางตอนเหนือของสเปนทำไมเราแปรเปลี่ยนตัวเองโดยใช้นวัตกรรมเชิงสังคมเนี่ยนะเข้ามาช่วย แล้วก็จะพูดรายละเอียดต่อไปก็บทบาทในเรื่องของศาสตร์การทำอาหารที่เรียก gastronomy เนี่ยเอามาช่วยในการแปรเปลี่ยนได้ยังไงแล้วก็มันมันเป็นหัวเรื่องที่ทำให้เราสามารถเชื่อมต่อกับส่วนอื่นต่างๆได้ทั่วโลกแล้วก็เดี๋ยวจะอธิบายเป็นลำดับจะได้สามารถติดตามแนวคิดเหล่านี้ได้ก็ขออนุญาตให้ผมแชร์จอภาพแชร์สไลด์นิดหนึ่งนะเดี๋ยวจะได้อธิบายต่อคือในระหว่างนี้ก็เล่าไปเรื่อยๆก่อนนะฮะในทางแคว้นบาสเป็นพื้นที่เล็กๆของสเปนก็คืออยู่ทางตอนใต้ติดกับทางตอนใต้ของฝรั่งเศสอยู่เหนือของสเปนถ้าคล้ายๆก็คล้ายๆกับทางบริเวณภาคใต้ของประเทศไทยคือเพราะว่าอะไรเพราะว่าพื้นที่นี้เนี่ยเป็นวัฒนธรรมเก่าแก่ดั้งเดิมมีภาษาของตัวเองนะฮะเป็นภาษาที่เก่าแก่ของยุโรปนะเก่าแก่มากที่สุดของยุโรปแห่งหนึ่งของโลกทีนะของยุโรปเดี๋ยวจะให้ดูแผนที่จะได้เห็นนะฮะเป็นยังไงเป็นอันนี้เป็นเขาเรียกบัสคันทรีนะเป็นถ้าดูแผนที่นี้ก็จะเห็นนะเนี่ยสีแดงๆเราเป็นภูมิภาคเล็กๆนะคือเป็นภูมิภาคอยู่ทางตอนเหนือของสเปนอยู่ตอนใต้ของฝรั่งเศสมีข้อท้าทายลักษณะที่ท้าทายเนี่ยก็คล้ายๆกับทางจังหวัดภาคใต้ของไทยเพราะว่าเรามีวัฒนธรรมที่แตกต่างจากประเทศของเรานะฮะจากรัฐอื่นแล้วก็โดยรัฐที่อยู่รายรอบเนี่ยไม่เหมือนกับเราคราวนี้ในพื้นที่ของเราคือเรากำลังพูดถึงประชากรประมาณ3 ล้านคนในพื้นที่นี้นะครับแล้วก็เมื่อประมาณ40 ปีที่ผ่านมาเนี่ยพื้นที่นี้เนี่ยเรียกว่าแทบจะล่มสลายทีเดียวนะฮะด้วยเหตุผลโดยวิกฤตทางเศรษฐกิจนะระบบเศรษฐกิจก็ล่มสลายแต่ก่อนนั้นมีอุตสาหกรรมหนักนะครับมีเรื่องของโรงงานผลิตหลอมโลหะถลุงโลหะอะไรพวกนี้แล้วก็โรงงานเหล็กอะไรเนี่ยฮะแต่ว่ามันก็เกือบจะล่มสลายไปเพราะว่าด้วยเหตุผลทางเศรษฐกิจที่มันล่มสลายเพราะมันมีอะไรมีการกระทำความรุนแรงจากทางฝ่ายรัฐะนะครับแล้วก็ขณะเดียวกันเนี่ยคนในแคว้นบาสเนี่ยก็เรียกร้องจะตั้งรัฐอิสระนะฮะแล้วก็มันก็มีการผสมผสานด้วยหลายเหตุผลนะทำให้แทบจะเศรษฐกิจล่มสลายจากการความไม่สงบที่เกิดขึ้นในแคว้นบาสในยุคนั้นนะแต่ณปัจจุบันถ้าไปดูนะในทางระหว่างประเทศเป็นยังไงบาสคันทรีเนี่ยหลังๆท่านคงจะเคยได้ยินนะดูอย่างอาคารสถานที่ที่สร้างนะฮะก็คืออาคารที่สร้างประมาณ20 ปีนะอาคารบิลโบเนี่ยบิลเบาก็คือมันเป็นตัวที่มาเปลี่ยนแปลงเมืองแต่ไม่ใช่เฉพาะเมืองอย่างเดียวคือไอ้ภาพลักษณ์อิมเมจอะไรต่างๆของเมืองทั้งหมดเลยเนี่ยก็มีการเปลี่ยนแปลงอันนี้ทางฮาร์วาร์ดนะครับทางไมเคิลพอตเตอร์นะครับศาสตราจารย์ชื่อดังของฮาร์วาร์ดเขาก็ไปศึกษาเหมือนกันว่าทำไมเศรษฐกิจของบาสสามารถที่จะเปลี่ยนผ่านทั้งหมดเลยนะไม่ใช่ว่าเปลี่ยนเฉพาะบางแง่เท่านั้นแล้วนี่ถ้าไปดูองค์ประกอบต่างๆในส่วนของการเปลี่ยนผ่านนะครับก็คือถ้าเรามาดูในเรื่องของเศรษฐกิจเราสามารถลดความยากจนได้อันนี้ก็เป็นหน้าที่น่าตื่นเต้นนะครับเป็นเรื่องที่น่าสนใจที่สุดเลยมันเป็นบางพื้นที่ที่อยู่ทางภาคใต้แล้วก็สามารถพัฒนาทางเศรษฐกิจได้อย่างรวดเร็วนะครับแล้วก็สร้างผลผลิตที่มีคุณภาพสูงได้บาสกันที่ถ้าดูในเชิงของ ดัชนีนะครับการพัฒนามนุษย์นะครับ Human Development Index เนี่ยดูเรื่องของอายุนะครับอายุความอายุแล้วก็ในแง่ของGDP นะครับ Basque Country เนี่ยอยู่ในลำดับสูงเลยนะครับแล้วเราก็เนื่องจากสถานการณ์ต่างๆที่เราเปลี่ยนสถานการณ์เปลี่ยนผ่านได้ดีกว่านะครับแล้วก็ทำได้ดีมากในเรื่องของในความยั่งยืนแล้วมันเกิดขึ้นได้ยังไงไอกระบวนการเปลี่ยนผ่านอันนี้นะคราวนี้ถ้าเราไปดูเรื่องของการ transform การเปลี่ยนผ่านตรงนี้มีปัจจัยเดียวจริงๆอันนี้สำคัญมากเลยเป็นพื้นที่เดียวในโลกที่สามารถเปลี่ยนผ่านนะในเชิงบวกได้คือแต่ว่ามันไม่ใช่เรื่องของไออะไรที่มันพิเศษคาถาวิเศษหรืออะไรพิสดารนะแต่ว่าคือมันมีการทำโครงการริเริ่มหลายอย่างที่มีการเชื่อมโยงกับปัจจัยอันนี้และเดี๋ยวจะอธิบายว่าเราใช้แนวทางในเชิงระบบยังไงที่เราสร้างความเปลี่ยนผ่านอันนี้ขึ้นมาแต่ว่าคือเราไม่ได้มองหาลักษณะการตอบโจทย์เพียงจุดใดจุดเดียวแต่ว่าเราดูซิมันมีโครงการริเริ่มหลายอย่างที่จะมาเชื่อมโยงกันแล้วนี้ถ้าดูภาพมันเป็นภาพที่เป็นการตัวแทนของไอความคิดริเริ่มต่างๆที่เกิดขึ้นในแคว้นในบาสคันทรีนะในช่วงนั้นในทางด้านหนึ่งมันมีการเปลี่ยนแปลงทางกายภาพลักษณะทางกายภาพของพวกของบ้านเมืองนะครับภูมิทัศน์บ้านเมืองต่างๆเดียวกันมีกิจกรรมใหม่ๆทางเศรษฐกิจกิจกรรมทางการพัฒนาที่บริษัทต่างๆช่วยกันทำแล้วก็หลายๆด้านก็ทำเป็นลักษณะเป็นสหกรณ์นะไปตั้งมาเป็นบริษัทรวมกลุ่มกันอย่างนี้เป็นต้นแล้วก็มีการทำเป็นกลุ่มเป็นเจ้าของบริษัทร่วมกันเงี้ยนะแล้วก็ทำในแง่ของปกติสหกรณ์หรือเรียกว่า cooperative เนี่ยมักจะทำในตั้งสหกรณ์ในภาคการเกษตรมากกว่าแต่อันนี้ทำในภาคบริการด้วยเป็นสหกรณ์หรือเป็นการรวมกลุ่มกันในด้านอื่นๆดังนั้นในด้านอื่นนะทางด้านยานยนต์เราก็มีบริษัทยี่ห้อใหญ่ๆแบรนด์ใหญ่ๆเข้ามาแล้วก็มีการผลิตชิ้นส่วนอะไหล่นะครับในบาสด้วยแล้วก็มีทั้งบริษัทขนาดเล็กที่ได้รับการสนับสนุนด้วยความคิดริเริ่มต่างๆที่เริ่มมาโดยองค์กรบริหารในส่วนท้องที่อย่างนี้นะฮะเพื่อที่จะช่วยกันพัฒนาเศรษฐกิจแล้วก็ทำในด้านต่างๆแล้วก็ทำมาเป็นภาคีเครือข่ายกันที่จะทำการศึกษาวิจัยแล้วก็ในด้านต่างๆในพื้นที่แล้วก็สามารถในระดับสหภาพยุโรปได้ด้วยนะโดยการทำงานกันเป็นภาคีเครือข่ายแล้วก็นี้ในเวลานั้นเนี่ยมันมีการตัดสินใจที่จะทำงานกันเป็นกลุ่มจากกลุ่มคนในชุมชนแล้วก็มาช่วยการฟื้นฟูภาษาในพื้นที่ด้วยดังนั้นในโรงเรียนเดี๋ยวนี้นะครับก็สามารถเรียนทั้งภาษาสเปนและภาษาบาสไปด้วยกันรวมถึงเป็นเรียนภาษาอังกฤษด้วยนะฮะในโรงเรียนคราวนี้เวลาเราคิดว่าอาการฟื้นฟูเหล่านี้ก็คือเราก็ให้ความเคารพนะครับทุกภาษานั้นก็คือก็จะไม่มีภาษาใดที่เป็นเรียกว่ามีความสัมพันธ์เหนือกับภาษาอื่นเหมือนกันแล้วก็แต่ว่าเราก็แทนที่จะทำอย่างนั้นเราก็ลงทุนลงทุนเพื่อที่จะฟื้นฟูรากเหง้าดั้งเดิมนะที่จะมีส่วนสำคัญในการที่จะแปลสภาพทั้งสังคมเลยแล้วตอนนั้นเนี่ยก็จะมีกระบวนการด้านสันติภาพกระบวนการทางด้านสิทธิมนุษยชนนะแล้วก็มีการเข้ามาร่วมเป็นโอกาสที่จะมาร่วมมือกันแล้วก็จะมาเรียกร้องให้หยุดความไม่สงบการใช้ความรุนแรงในพื้นที่นั้นแล้วในทางสังคมเนี่ยทางบาสเองก็เริ่มเรียกว่าทำให้เกิดเรียกว่ามีรายได้พื้นฐานนะครับทุกคนจะต้องได้มีการจ้างงาน มีการสนับสนุนด้านต่างๆหลายๆสิ่งมันก็เกิดขึ้นมาในช่วงเวลาเดียวกันด้วยในภาพจะเห็นมีเชฟนะมีภาพเชฟหลายท่านเชฟที่ทำงานในช่วงนั้นเนี่ยแม้ว่าจะมีการใช้ความรุนแรงความไม่สงบอะไรต่างๆแต่เขาสามารถที่จะเปิดภัตตาคารเปิดร้านใหม่ขึ้นมาแล้วก็สามารถที่จะขยับไปอยู่ลำดับต้นๆเลยนะครับในระดับโลกนะครับในทางด้านศาสตร์ด้านอาหารแล้วก็เขาสามารถที่จะดึงดูดคนมาจากทั่วโลกด้วยเพื่อมารับประทานอาหารในร้านของพวกเขาแล้วก็เชฟเหล่านี้เขาก็สามารถที่จะทำให้มันเกิดขึ้นได้นะครับแล้วก็มีอีกท่านหนึ่งท่านชื่อมาเรียนฟังชื่อไม่ทันนะท่านก็เป็นเรียกว่าเป็นเชฟของมิชลินสตาร์ที่ยาวนานมากเลยท่านหนึ่งนะแล้วก็คือจริงๆเนี่ยถ้าพูดก็เป็นการยืดยาวในเรื่องปัจจัยต่างๆที่เกื้อหนุนกันในบาสคันทรีเนี่ยทำให้เกิดการเปลี่ยนผ่าน อันนี้เป็นสไลด์นี้สิ่งที่เราเรียนรู้นะมันมีความเป็นได้ที่จะสร้างความเปลี่ยนแปลงในเชิงระบบนะฮะไม่ใช่เปลี่ยนมุมใดมุมเดียวคือทำไงให้ทั้งสังคมเนี่ยมันเปลี่ยนผ่านไปแล้วประสบการณ์ของเราคือเราต้องเปลี่ยนอย่างเร็วคือแต่ว่าถ้ารวมแล้วก็คือถ้าจะใช้เวลาเป็น100 ปีกว่าจะเปลี่ยนผ่านมันก็น่าเสียดายเราก็ต้องพยายามผลักดันนะครับขณะที่เราเจอกับความไม่สงบความรุนแรงความปั่นป่วนทางเศรษฐกิจเนี่ยนะจุดสำคัญต้องมีตัวที่ขับเคลื่อนผู้ที่จะขับเคลื่อนแล้วก็คือต้องสร้างเรียกว่าจินตนาการให้กับประชาชนต้องคิดว่าความเปลี่ยนแปลงมันเป็นไปได้เปลี่ยนแปลงนำมาได้แล้วเราก็ต้องเรียกว่าช่วยกันคิดอย่างลึกซึ้งเลยจะทำให้เกิดความเปลี่ยนยังไงแม้ว่าอยู่ภายใต้สภาพความยากลำบากในแคว้นบาสตอนนั้นเนี่ยแล้วก็แต่มันมีความเป็นไปได้เพราะฉะนั้นทุกคนก็จะออกมาช่วยด้วยความเป็นไปได้นั้นอันนี้ถือว่าเป็นแรงขับเคลื่อนภายในจึงทำให้ทุกสิ่งเป็นไปได้นะมิฉะนั้นแล้วมันจะเป็นไปไม่ได้เลยคราวนี้โครงการถ้าหากว่าแยกส่วนนะครับแยกกันทำมันจะไม่สามารถเปลี่ยนอย่างลึกซึ้งได้แล้วเนี่ยผมก็คุยกับคุณอภิชยาในลักษณะที่เรามาช่วยกันทำงานร่วมกันเราก็จะสร้างพอร์ตโฟลิโออย่าทำเป็นลักษณะโครงการเดี่ยวโครงการแยกที่ต่างคนต่างทำแล้วก็อีกอันนึงเนี่ยเราต้องแก้ไขปัญหาความเหลื่อมล้ำเพราะมันหลีกเลี่ยงไม่ได้มันมีความเหลื่อมล้ำอยู่งั้นเราก็ต้องทำโมเดลนะครับในเชิงสังคมทำไงถึงจะแก้ไขปัญหาเหลื่อมล้ำอันนี้ถ้าเรามาพูดถึงเรื่องศาสตร์อาหารหรือ gastronomic ที่พูดถึงนะศาสตร์อาหารแล้วนี่กรณีก็จะพูดให้ฟังแล้วก็เล่าเรื่องตัวอย่างที่เหลือคือมันมีความคิดเริ่มจากทางภาครัฐเนี่ยมันการศาสตร์อาหารเนี่ยเป็นเรื่องของอยู่ในภาคบริการใช่ไหมมันเป็นเรื่องสำคัญเหมือนกับอย่างทางภาคใต้ของไทยเนี่ยมีมรดกทางวัฒนธรรมนะครับแล้วก็ที่สำคัญที่เกี่ยวข้องกับด้านอาหารศาสตร์อาหารที่ดีงั้นถ้าเราจะนำมาใช้ในการแปลเปลี่ยนทำไงศาสตร์อาหารเนี่ยจะส่งอิทธิพลต่อระบบอาหารแล้วอย่างถ้าให้อย่างมิชลินเข้ามาเนี่ยมิชลินเข้ามาก็เป็นแค่ส่วนเดียวฮะ
transform around food. The origin of this heritage and riches in our case is a tradition of cooking clubs that we have in the Basque area. So actually, people, mostly male in the past, but now mixed clubs, they get together as a social gathering to cook together. So this culture of meeting around food in like getting to learn how to cook certain dishes in a better way actually generated a culture food, but also a demand of people that wanted to see a better restaurant emerging. So if you come to Basque Country today, you can also go and visit and eat in these gastronomic societies. That's what the image you see at the top of the screen. But on the right part, what you see is one particular group of chefs that we have been actually working with, and they have been visiting southern Thailand in the last couple of years, who have 2 Michelin were recognized with different Michelin star awards. And what these chefs always keep telling us is that in the case of the Basque Country, all the gastronomic scene, all this complex gastronomic scene, is connected with only 3 basic sauces that are different from the rest of gastronomic heritage in Spain, France, or in Europe. Only 3 basic sauces had the potential to generate a totally different way of understanding gastronomy. And they remind us that there was no such a thing as top gastronomic scene in the area 40, 50 years ago. So actually getting together different chefs in this case to work together, competing with each other, but at the same collaborating, recovering this tradition of cooking together on what type of food were our families doing centuries ago, has been able to generate a whole industry. What you see there is the ASTI brand, that is the Research and Technology Institute dedicated to food systems. We know that in southern Thailand, you have also a very good similar institute to ASTI that is already working on this way. And the collaboration of these chefs, this research institute and other institutions created what you see also at the bottom of the screen, what is the Basque Culinary Center. That is one of the top institutions in the world where chefs can come and get trained in order to work in this top gastronomic scene. So it's not a traditional cooking school. It is actually a university dedicated to research and innovation in top gastronomy. The best chefs in the world are associated with this gastronomic center, and they have helped the whole industry, not only restaurants, but actually producers, but the companies that are commercializing the products, the whole ecosystem to operate in a different way. And just to finish in the examples, what you see actually is to give an example of what type of products they generate. What you see at the bottom of the screen, and they look stones, like stones. Actually, when you go to a restaurant, they serve you those stones. You get a bit surprised by that, but they invite you to eat them because they are potatoes that have been cooked with a surface of eatable ceramic. So their research that the Technology Institute has conducted in collaboration with the restaurants has created, for example, this product that is an eatable ceramic that can actually be commercialized and used in other restaurants in the world. And finally, thanks to this ecosystem, the Basque Country is working with regions and countries all around the world to share this experience of transforming the whole gastronomic scene, but also keep learning from others. This is an image of a delegation from the Croatian government that has been very active in partnering with us. They're actually coming here in 2 weeks. So that kind of exchanges are reinforced. When our chefs, the Basque chefs, visited your region, they were amazed about the heritage you have, some of the techniques that you have for fermentation, around voodoo sauce and others. For them are top quality techniques that they are actually today applying to their Michelin awarded restaurants. So our message is a message of invitation to keep this collaboration going. What you see in the screen now are some examples of certain products and initiatives that we were able to identify in the past. Now, Apichai and her team are, have developed this process much farther, and we have many other initiatives that are going to be prototyped. So we will be very, very happy to keep this conversation going. And just finally, one suggestion for if you want to read a beautiful book about how gastronomy can change the world, I suggest you to read this book. It's called Cod, a biography of the fish that changed the world. That actually is a beautiful example of what we are talking today. So how transforming or just understanding better how a core product like cod, for example, can have a huge impact in the transformation of the whole region or actually the world. So thank you very much, and I'm very happy to continue this conversation. And you have some questions or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gokar. Now we have like a main participants, like they are Thai, and now they can better understand the historical background of the Basque Country, in terms of conflict and instability as well. So one of the most unique things of innovation that happening in Basque Country is that innovation is not only the technology, but innovation is the process itself. When it comes to the new idea and also like the new processes, new approaches, can you help define and also tell us the definition of innovation in the context of Basque Country, and can explain more to Thai people when it comes to innovation? Like sometimes people can hype it up. Can you explain the definition of innovation?
Normally, when we talk of innovation, we think it's about technology. How can we create new tools for advancing the industry? And of course, it is about technology, obviously, but it's not all about technology. And all the places, all the regions in the world that have been able to transform themselves, they always combine technology innovation with social innovation. So when we talk about social innovation, we are talking about new products, new processes, and new relationships that actually make things better for the community. So, for example, as I was explaining before, in our case, as important as investing in technology in the industrial sector or in the gastronomic scene, it was crucial to invest in what it was called a basic income that would help families to not to get into poverty line where they were struggling with unemployment. But also another fundamental social innovation for us in that area was that new companies were created to generate employment for disadvantaged groups. So in the Basque Country, for example, it was created a company to employ people with mental and physical disabilities. And that company today has more than 7,000 workers and is one of the leading companies in the area. What they did differently was to make an agreement with the government to say, we don't want you to put all the money in services, so for these people to be, institutionalized, but actually let's put the money in new companies so these people can actually work. And instead of creating normal companies, let's design companies the other way around. It's like what kind of things these people can do. And then we redesign the processes of manufacturing, for example. And these companies that employ people with mental and physical disabilities today in the Basque Country, they work with big automotive companies like Audi, like Renault and others, manufacturing components for these companies. So they are a normal company in the way that they make products and they sell, but they have innovated in the way that this company is organized internally, and they adapt the manufacturing processes to the characteristics of the people they employ. So you can see a lot of these examples in the case of the Basque Country. And I think the most important thing is that in that kind of vision of how do you create innovation, you don't look at social in one space and technology in the other, but actually how the two of them can work together. And this type of social innovations can actually make traditional technology innovations work better. Thank you very much.
How like a policymaker here in Songkhla or the practitioners or the government officer, how to be a good listener and how to engage and also like bring the people in the local areas and also bring the local communities into the policy making.
Yes, this is crucial in our opinion in terms of innovation. It is impossible to have an impact in our communities if we don't listen more carefully. And by listening, well, we understand, first of all, have the capacity to visualize things that are already happening. So what we call the systems mapping, what is going on, really have a better understanding, not only things that I am doing, what I want to do, but actually what is going on in the broader sense. And then be able to talk to people differently, not to convince them to do something different, but actually to better understand what do they want, what are the problems they see, and what are the opportunities. In a way that we are not trying to change their minds, we are trying to better understand. And that difference in our experience is crucial for innovation. If we try to listen more carefully, then the other person will connect with us much better and much faster. They will not be interested in working with us if they just feel that they just want to do what you want. When you actually listening and you connect what they want to do with what you want to do, then there is a profound link there that can generate more innovation. So therefore, we are working with Apichaya and other colleagues to develop these listening infrastructures that can be, traditional conversations, but we can also incorporate digital listening. Today, we can listen to what are the conversations that people are having in social media or in other spaces, and try to analyze that. So normally what we are listening to, what is the story that people are saying in the surface? What are things that they are not saying but are important? And more profoundly, what I was referring to before, if there is the conviction that things can change or not. And this is a fundamental question, I think, for Southern Thailand or for any other place that wants to innovate. Is like, do you really believe in a very profound way that change is possible or not? Because if you think, although you are saying it publicly that change is possible, but you don't believe really in that, it is going to be absolutely impossible to make things change. And so we need to really understand if people believe that profound change is possible. And if it's not, if they believe that it's not possible, let's talk about it. Let's take those ideas into the public discussion. Because when you put those ideas in the public discussion, normally people react and they say, you know what, it's true that we are always saying that things are not going to change. And we actually could make things, and then there are examples. Normally, in the case of Southern Thailand, we know now after the work we have conducted that there are so many initiatives, so many interesting initiatives, community-driven initiatives, government-driven initiatives, private sector-driven initiatives that has the potential to transform the area, that our work normally is just to connect them, to listen more carefully to the people's needs and aspiration, and generate those portfolios of experimentation that are responding to people's need more carefully and profoundly. So for us, a real innovation, real social innovation it is not possible without a deep listening exercise, and listen to those needs and aspiration. It's something that we have been in the case of UNDP, this has been a work that UNDP has been doing for a very long time. But sometimes the listening part has been disconnected from the experimentation, and that is what we are looking for now. Thank you.
When we talk about the innovation, we might already understand that we need to have stable country and also a stable city first before applying innovation. But in the case of vast country, we don't wait for that. We apply innovation to solve conflict and also develop cities at the same time. Can you explain or give us the case study of vast country? How can we do that? Because it will apply well to the southern context of Thailand.
Yes, this is what is really interesting to discuss. We normally think that for generating innovation, we need to have let's say a perfect context, where there is no problems, where there is no violence. And in our case, this was not the situation. So actually, in our case, it played the opposite role. So because the situation was difficult, people were kind of getting together and working together harder to find solutions, because as you know, the impact of violence can be terrible in investments, can be terrible in in the development of certain initiatives. So in our case, there was kind of a combined efforts. First of all, to work around peace building initiatives, and then not stopping the initiatives the government and that the business could take in order to achieve that scenario. So the main difference was in some other countries, normally a key agents say, well, let's get peace first, and then we will talk about the economy. And in our case, it was not. It's like, let's work on peace building and socioeconomic development at the same time. And actually, in our case, the economic transformation had a huge impact in stopping the violence, because the people's lives were the conditions of people's lives were getting better. But again, how was that possible? How that economic development was possible in that context was because those existing initiatives that were in the region were working together. So they were kind of uniting forces at technology companies, government, social initiatives, trying to generate that kind of portfolio of interconnected initiatives, not dissociating human rights in one side, economic development in the other side, social transformation in the other side. So, and generating those dialogue and deliberation spaces was crucial for in our case. So we'll be extremely interested if local institutions in southern Thailand wants to collaborate in the field of gastronomy or in the field of economic development in technology or innovation in public policies. Will be really interested in developing those collaborations. Not only UNDP give us the kind of the framework, but I think there is a real opportunity for institutions from both regions to work together. And again, I think all the work that you're doing around food systems and gastronomy is a fantastic opportunity, because you have so much to teach us, and you have such a rich heritage in that field, that we know how powerful this can be in terms of generating economic transformation, but also in changing the perception that people have about the area internationally. Thank you.
Thank you, Gokar. And this workshop today, the morning, we are also already brainstorm about how innovation can apply into the local food system in the southern part of Thailand. And we also like to brainstorm about the level, how we can scale up the innovation. And I also read your research and the case of Basque country. Like you have 5 levels of social innovation platform in conflict areas. Can you explain to us how are those 5 levels and how the practitioners can apply innovation into each level to scale up the impact?
Yes, thank you, Pichai. This is also a really interesting learning from our case, that when we see what kind of initiatives took place in the Basque area in order to transform the situation, we don't see just one type. We see very different types and forms. And we talk about 5 different types, but probably there are more, but for us, there were like 5 different types. So what we call community initiatives, so initiatives that probably didn't have a very robust business model, but they were very important for communities. For example, these initiatives around the recovery of the Basque language, in our case, were crucial because those initiatives really brought the community together and gave value to the local heritage and culture. So we talk about the importance of community-driven initiatives, and I know that you have worked a lot in this space. Then we talk about the typology of startups or smaller scale initiatives like entrepreneurs that want to develop new products and services. So this is also very important. But we normally highlight the necessity not to talk only about the startups. So startups are important and technology startups are important, but they are not the only solution. So we need community initiatives, we need startups, and we need also larger scale collaboration initiatives between the public sector and the private sector. For example, that example that I gave you about the Basque Culinary Center, that initiative, where it's a larger scale infrastructure, was paid by the Basque government, but is managed by a private industrial cooperative corporation. So those kind of public-private collaborations in the Basque case are very common, very important. So that's kind of the 3rd level. The 4th level are new services. How do we redesign the existing public services? So how can we work with the government to deliver services better and with a community perspective? And finally, regulation. And we talk about regulation because sometimes you want to do new things, but the regulation is not allowing you to do that. So it's really important all the time to look, okay, is the regulation we have helping us to innovate? And if it's not, can we test new types of regulations? So our suggestion for all the countries we work with is like to look at these 5 different levels of initiatives: community, startup, large scale, public-private collaborations, new services, and regulation. Because if you have an equilibrated portfolio, it is much more possible that a systemic change will happen. If are only in one of those levels, if they are only community or they are only services, it's very difficult that they will have a transformative capacity in the whole system. So those are 5 types of impact, and we normally try to develop portfolios that are equilibrated around those 5 categories. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I think when we had the workshop today, the participants are very active to come up with a grassroots innovation. But another important role that also attended the workshop today is a policy think tank in Thailand named the NSDC at the national level. The reflections that we have got is that we don't really have the regulations or policy that support the environmental atmosphere of the innovation yet. In Basque country, what is the role of a policy maker, or what is a change that can also support at the national level or the top-down level to support the ecosystem of the innovation?
Yes, this was also very important for us because we had the opportunity in the Basque case, the local institutions have a autonomy capacity for managing certain issues. So in the case of regulation or in the case of investment, we had the capacity to take certain decisions. Not everything in terms of taxation, as you can imagine, being under the European Union context, there are certain laws and regulations that you have to follow, but there are always, a space for testing and adapting regulations to your own situation. So, and there is more and more, globally, this need to create what they are called regulatory sandboxes. So what means like, how can we, in this case, have a conversation with the national government and with other institutions to say, okay, can we, try to experiment with different types of regulation? We generate in southern Thailand certain areas where we can learn how to regulate differently. So if we can get those agreements are really important because you will generate a new knowledge, and sometimes things will work, sometimes they will not work, but when they work, then you can scale them, and then you can scale those solutions to other areas. So it will be a great, I think, asset if, in the case of Southern Thailand, we could discuss the possibility of certain sandboxes to discuss new types of regulations. At the end of the day, the all around the necessary transition to more sustainable economy requires new regulation that everybody's trying to develop, and nobody knows. So if nobody knows how to do it, we need to experiment and we need to learn. So it will be really, really interesting if we could add to the existing portfolio of more community-driven initiatives, the regulation, this capacity, and to have also, obviously, the capacity to invest directly in these prototypes. Because unless we have certain capacity to regulate and to invest, how to scale, it's always going to be much more difficult.
Yes, I think the idea of having sandbox is also very new, and Thai people are very interested, especially the Thai government. But the problem is that when we talk about sandbox and experimentation, we haven't had a clear idea or clear example yet to really have a sandbox that put down all the existing regulations to test the new ideas without limitations. For the Basque country, do you have any example that Thailand can learn from to implement the sandbox and really come up with new ideas that regulations are no longer the barrier or the limitations?
Yes, I mean, at the moment there are specific examples around the regulation, for example, of green technologies. So if for example you want to develop in southern Thailand self-sufficient businesses, for example, from energy perspective, normally there are certain regulations that you need to follow of who is producing the energy, who is consuming the energy, how is this transported. So in our case, we had a capacity to play faster, and sometimes it's only a matter of time because a particular regulation, for example, in Thailand as a whole, can take 6 months to get a certain license, for example. If you could fast track that and generate a system where in southern Thailand you can do the same thing in 1 month, that can generates economic development. So only with the capacity to get the regulation faster, you would generate more economic activity. So this is something very specific that we could test. How long does a company needs to get certain permissions to do something? If we can do that in southern Thailand faster, we can generate economic development. In terms of food and gastronomy, in the Basque case was very important to regulate the brands of certain foods and areas. So just by the capacity of the local government to certify, not only a physical product, but actually a technique. So how something is being, and this is something discussion we had with your colleagues about voodoo sauce. So voodoo sauce is not about the products that are unique in the world. It's about the way that you are mixing them, the way you manage that. That in certain countries, you don't get a certification if there is not uniqueness in the product, but you can get a certification and the government can be backing a way of doing things. And that way of doing things differently can generate a new market. So that's another specific example. In terms of investment, another example that worked really well in the Basque Country was that the support that the government did to companies for innovation was not, let's say, general support. There was a special agency developed to support companies in developing new products and services. So therefore, the money would go directly into these new agencies if local companies were demanding this support. So there are specific ways on how we can use that capacity for regulation. So in the case of gastronomy, in the case of energy, but in many other cases. So our suggestion will be to get together in the same room the key companies of Southern Thailand with the government and ask them directly, what are the regulations that you would like to improve if you would have the chance, and send a specific requests to the government to do things differently. We have done that recently with a big energy corporation in Spain, and they came back with about 10 different specific regulations that they wanted to test. So I think if we would do the same exercise in Southern Thailand, we could get a very, very specific requests from companies and other actors in terms of regulation.
Hi, Gorka. Great to have you. Thanks so much.
Hello.
I want to go back to the issue of reputation and perception. That's a similarity that Basque has with Southern Thailand, but you're maybe 20 years ahead. So can you elaborate a little bit for our partners here in Southern Thailand, how innovation applied to gastronomy changed the image of the Basque country, and how this really transformed the way that both Madrid, and draw a parallel with Bangkok, but also the general public, looked at Basque with a different eye, right? And it changed the whole dynamic into a positive one with tourism development and everything. So that there's the same potential here. It just has to happen. So I think it would be useful if you can elaborate a little bit on this. Thanks much.
Thank you, Arnold. Yes, I mean, this is something really extraordinary because, as you can imagine, in those days where our economy was struggling, when we had violence, every week, it was almost impossible to believe that a restaurant could generate, such a good offer that people from abroad would come to have an expensive, meal in a place where there is violence and economic collapse. So what these chefs did was say, well, we believe that this is possible. And that was, for us, the most disruptive thinking. It's like, why do you think that bringing people from abroad to pay for a very expensive meal is possible when you have violence? So what is in your mind that is making you to believe that that is possible, when the logic thing will be to say, well, this is not going to happen. So when we reflect on that, then you realize that how important is the inner conviction, what is on your mind of what things are possible or not. So in this case, these people didn't think much, because when you ask them, why do you think it was possible, they take normally the question as something strange, that because they didn't think about it, they just did it. They say, we have no alternative. Either we offer a perfect menu, or nobody's going to come, because the situation is really bad. So actually, the context made these people to think we need to be the best, otherwise nobody's going to come. And they started to work together, because in restaurants, at that time, they were all of them competing with each other. As you can imagine, you have your own recipe, and you don't want others to know your recipe. So it was the world of gastronomy was a world of competition rather than collaboration. But in this case, these local chefs, they got together. They would get together because they needed to learn from each other. They will keep a lot of information, obviously, from each of them to compete, because they were competing for the same customers at the same time. But they learned to develop this collaboration and competition at the same time. For them, what they were thinking was, okay, if we have 10 restaurants that are very good, then more people will come here. So it's not that if we only have one restaurant, now nobody will come. If we have 10 very good restaurants, then people will come to taste different things. So they were able to develop this collaboration and competition strategy. And once that people started coming, as Renaud was explaining, then suddenly the Basque Country was not the area only known because of violence. It was also the area that was known for top gastronomy. And this is the message that local communities wanted to be associated with. Local communities didn't want to be associated with violence. They wanted to say, we are, the Basque people are the people who can cook in this way. We are not the people who are always, engaged in violence and problems. So that international connection gave the Basque Country the possibility to think, well, if we have been able to do this in the gastronomic scene, if we can be the best in the world, despite of the violence in gastronomy, why cannot we do the same thing in other fields? Why can, when you think about the Guggenheim Foundation coming to the Basque Country at that time, that was a very bold decision. Why the Guggenheim Foundation wanted to go to an area where there was violence. But the people who were engaging with them were convinced that they could convince them, that they could, say, because we have done this in the gastronomic scene, despite of the violence, we can be global leaders in certain things if we work together. So I think that in the importance of gastronomy in our case has been crucial in all different elements. In terms of economic activity, because it's connected with production of quality production of products and services, in the employment, in the offering of the gastronomic scene, but also in the brand, in the image. And that was something that actually nobody was against. So it was a unifying factor at the local level between communities, but also, as you were saying, how to bring central governments into this conversation. So for what we know about the, the richness of gastronomic heritage in southern Thailand, this is a tremendous asset that could be the base for other transformations. So when we talk about gastronomy, we are not only about certain restaurants. We are talking about the brand, the image that you project, and the whole industry that is connected with this activity. In our case, you cannot understand the socioeconomic transformation of the Basque Country in a context of violence without the transformation of the gastronomic scene. Thank you.
So I'm listening to you. I think changing a mindset of people is the key, but I guess that is not easy. So it leads to the question from the floor is that they ask that which organization that lead to change your mindset of people drive social innovation, which bringing every sector to work together. And how can a local NGO be a part and also another player to drive social innovation?
Yes, this is how actually these ideas are operating in our minds. It's what we call the cultural dimension of innovation. All experts of innovation talk about this, but it's normally very difficult to see how do we take this into practice, what the cultural dimension of innovation means. So that's why we insist a lot on the listening aspect of it, because local culture is not only about cultural expressions of how do we manifest ourselves or the language or the traditions. Culture is the way we interpret reality, the way we interpret innovation, change, if it's possible or not. And the only way to really understand this is by really listening differently to different stakeholders, if they think that change is possible or not, and why do they think is, and how do we generate the liberation opportunities. Some of them might have to be digital nowadays, but there will be others that can be, traditional conversations, collective interpretation of what is going on. And what we know from practice is once that you get that kind of exercise, co-creation and co-design comes very fast, because people get together and say, this is the need, what can we do about it? Who is doing something about it? So the process of, really connecting things into in a larger scale, in our experience, is directly influenced by the discussion and the listening capacity of the key stakeholders. So sometimes it's very difficult. We know that to justify how are we investing, time and resources in listening, in better understanding the situation, in knowing if these people, these institutions believe that change is possible, innovation is possible or not. But in our experience, is an investment that we make in terms of then scaling up and moving faster in the innovation process. The UNDP, I think, is giving us this extraordinary opportunity to think about change and innovation in a different way, to connect systems mapping, the listening, with co-creation and prototyping. And from what we know so far, Southern Thailand has all the necessary assets and conditions to develop larger scale innovations. When we compare the situation in Southern Thailand with many other parts of the world where we are working, you have, everything in some ways. Renaud was saying that if you compare with the Basque Country, we might have, might be in different moments, and it's probably true. but I can guarantee you that what you have in terms of heritage, in terms of people, in terms of infrastructures, in terms of education, it is extraordinary. These are extraordinary assets in terms of developing new innovation models that when we compare with other parts of the world, they don't have many of the things that you already have, educated people, infrastructures, heritage. So in our opinion, sometimes the key is again that kind of willingness or belief that change is possible, and how do we generate collaborative strategies? Because a complex system like Southern Thailand will not be transformed by individual initiatives, as there is no system in the world. So how do we generate those collaboration initiatives and the safe space for experimentation? Because if there is no, we cannot experiment, we are always going to keep doing the same things we know, and this is not going to take us into a different place. So again, those are the core elements of the processes that you are trying to develop. Better understanding of the system, what we call the systems mapping, better listening infrastructure, really understand better what people want, and then co-creation and prototyping opportunities in an interconnected way as a portfolio. Once we have all those elements, we have no doubt that Southern Thailand has all the capabilities that are needed for larger scale transformation. So we'll be delighted to be connected and to keep learning from everything that is actually going on in the area, and that sometimes we feel it is not properly communicated. So the richness, the assets that are in the area are normally not properly valued and perceived, sometimes by local actors and sometimes by external actors. So we really believe that there is an extraordinary opportunity for larger scale transformation.
Your answer leads to the last question for the discussion. For the social innovation, we need to have a mindset. We need to have new idea. We also need to have regulations that enable us to come up with the innovation and also a sandbox. But apart from that, those I mentioned is not enough. Apart from that, we also need to have trust from the investor as well. But when we build or create new idea, it's not easy to gain the trust from the investors. How can we do that? How can we build a trust with the investor to invest in the new idea?
Yes, you're totally right. And we see this in all the innovation processes. Without trust, larger scale transformation will not happen. And again, what we know about trust is that trust is a relational process. It's not a transactional process, in the way that you don't generate trust just by doing something based on your own interest. You generate trust when there is a conversation. When there is a conversation where you actually try to understand what the other position is, and the other position also is listening to your team. So that dialogue and that listening part is crucial. And then you generate stronger foundations for trust when you co-create, when you do things together, rather than expecting, in this case, the investor to come and give you the money. If the investor, in this case, can be a public investor or a private investor, is part of the listening process, is part of the sense-making process, is part of the co-creation process, then they are and they will be more willing to invest, rather than if you just invite the investor at the end of the process when everything is package and they have to say yes or no. So how do we incorporate, in this case, investors in the whole process, not only at the end? It's fundamental. So the platform, a concept, an approach. So it's not, again, it's not linear that you do the list and then when you have the prototype, then you go and ask for money. It actually, how the investor is part of the listening process. They are invited to interpret the information. They take part in the co-creation, and they take part in the last essay. True that there are traditional investors who don't want to engage in these processes, and they just want to be at the end and say yes or no. But there are also other type of investors who are, they believe that if they know more from the beginning, their decision about where to invest will be better. And that is, those are the type of partners that we need. We need investors who have, more systemic view, a long-term view, that they are not there just to, looking for the unicorn or the idea that will, change everything. Because normally those unicorns end up leaving the area and going to Bangkok or going to New York, and having very little impact in your region. So so it is something we need to really explore. How can we engage investors from the public sector and from the private sector in the whole innovation process, not only at the end. And that is the trust for us. The trust, in this case, we're talking about the trust with the investor, but it's the same thing between companies, and it's the same thing between companies, public sector, and civil society. Trust is generated when people are part of the process, and then when you have to deliver, you do what you said that you had to do. That is the core responsibility. But again, you will do better if you feel that you have been part of the process, and if you don't do it, you will have a negative impact in the rest of the stakeholders. Obviously, this is more difficult than just explaining it like that, but the process of trust generation is, as I said, a relational process. It's not transactional, and it's not only conditioned by interest. Interest is important, but it's not the only factor, and normally it's not the most important factor. Once that the public institutions, private institutions, and civil society engage, that generates a very powerful dynamic of trust that will affect the whole innovation cycle.
So I'm learning from you today that everything is a process, including engaging process, listening process, building trust process, create a social innovation in a city, in a community, or even at the national level. Do you have any last suggestion or last word that you want to talk to the policymakers, practitioners, or government officials in Songkhla province in Thailand?
Well, yeah, my final comments is really to thank you for giving us this opportunity. Every time we know more about southern Thailand, we are more convinced that the potential for larger scale transformation is there. There are so many interesting things going on, and sometimes you have the feeling that they are not properly valued internally and externally. So I think that is our, I think our most important feeling about it. That there is a potential that is not properly being valued, and that the process that you have started to incorporate these innovation dynamics in terms of listening, in terms of systems mapping, co-creation, they will generate a longer term impact if they are properly interconnected as a portfolio of experimentation. You are probably, globally one of the few regions that are actually doing this type of work in a structured and systemic way. So I think, let's keep insisting in this way, and let's make it connected globally, because what you guys are doing, it is, there's a lot of regions in the world that should be learning from it. And at the same time, that dialogue, especially with areas that have gone through violence and that they have been able to transform, I think that is something that we need to invest more in. And yes, thank you again for this opportunity.